Georgia game. Alabama played one of its more complete games this game. Not saying it was absolutely perfect. In Nate's post game press conference, he said that he really felt like about 36 minutes were better. There was a little bit of a stretch, kind of late in the second half or late in the first half. That definitely felt like Alabama maybe was not playing to their potential. There was quite a lot of turnovers. But the thing that Alabama did, even though there were turnovers, is they didn't stop playing defense, right? Alabama did not let their defense wane, even though their offense was having a few issues. And we'll talk about those here in a minute because I don't think the issues were the same as the issues you had in the Ole Miss game. Were they still turnovers? Yes. But at some points, it was, Mark Sears trying to make a pocket pass on the roll to Grant Nelson, a play that got you a lot of points in the Mississippi State game, right? It was people making the appropriate pass and then just good individual defensive effort by Georgia, right? Sometimes it's not a mistake by the offense, it's just better defense. And in a few cases, I think that's what happened. Not to say all of them were that, but I think a few of them definitely were that. But Alabama definitely is able to hold up its defensive effort. It really felt like in a few moments in this game, Alabama was going to take over and just dominate. In the first half, we're up by 12. It looks like we're going to completely dominate. Then Georgia cuts it close. Then Alabama's able to go on a little bit of a run to end the half and go up 11 at half. And then in the second half, it was really catalyzed by Mike White getting a tech. And, if you were in this arena or in the stadium, it definitely, for whatever reason, Mike was arguing there was one ball that was called a jump ball. The next one was called a foul. In his opinion, they were the exact same play. I don't think that they were. But, Mike White thought that they were. He gets into the ref. It gets a technical foul. Mark hits both free throws, and then it really had the crowd energized, and Alabama was able to build on that lead more and more and more, right? I think a lot of this had to do with Alabama just, like I said, playing sound defense and, playing together as a team. You also saw some guys hit shots that are not always hitting shots. And I think those are some of the guys that I want to talk about when you're talking about individual performances. We did have 5 guys go in double figures, so we're not going to be able to talk about everybody. I don't want this to be, 30 minutes just breaking down this game. But, the big people that I think absolutely need mentioned, first and foremost, Aiden Sherrill. Aiden Sherrill has to be mentioned because, when you're thinking about the team currently, if, we have 10 guys that have been healthy, that are generally healthy. Obviously, Darion Reed and LeBaron Philon did not play their best game. They're still coming back from injury. Nate says he wasn't even really expecting them to have great games because they haven't had the practice reps. But in terms of guys that, are still on scholarship and are still able to play, we have 10 guys. And number 10 of those guys in terms of minutes this season has been Aiden Sherrill. A lot of that has to do with the size he had coming in. Some of that has to do with foul trouble. But in this game, due to the fact that Georgia plays 2 bigs the majority of the game, Nate was like, hey, I thought I could get Aiden some minutes. Aiden plays 20 minutes in this game. And in those 20 minutes, he was super productive. He had a steal. He had a block. He had 7 rebounds. He had an assist. He ends up going 2 of 3 from 3-point line. He goes 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Aiden, in the first few minutes, Aiden has 10 points and really was, a spark off the bench. This really felt like the Aiden Sherrill that Nate Oates has raved about all offseason. And since he recruited him, Nate has often said that Aiden is the prototypical big that they're looking for, somebody that can pass, dribble, and shoot. And a lot of people were like, are you sure Aiden can shoot? Because on paper, he was only 4 of 24. Well, Nate was actually asked about that in the post-game press conference, and Nate said, hey, we chart everything from the minute a guy gets into our program on, and in live ball any 5-on-5 and live ball stuff, Aiden's a 40% shooter. He goes, so Nate looks at him as a 40% 3-point shooter, and he wants him to shoot it like that, meaning he has the green light. If you're open, take the shot. So Aiden Sherrill, at this point, gets his feet set, gets into some shots. Obviously, the extra time he's able to play because he's not in foul trouble helps him get some extra minutes, which helps him get more into rhythm, which I'm sure helps his shot. But he has his best shooting night in Alabama uniform, a really, really good game. Overall, I thought Aiden's minutes were absolutely incredible. Another guy that, didn't play, honestly, a ton of minutes, but I thought was super productive in the minutes he played, as well as Jaren Stevenson. Jaren Stevenson hits 2 corner threes, goes perfect from the field, only has a couple of rebounds, but does have a block. I thought that Jaren overall played a pretty good game. A lot of people talk about Jaren as, oh my gosh, he can't be played. He can't be played because of how poor the shooting has been. Well, first off, he's been shooting a little better here recently, right? He's had quite a few games here in a row, I believe, that he's made shots. He missed his shots in the Mississippi State game, but since Texas A&M, he's made a 3 in every game except for Mississippi State and Kentucky. And he's only taken maximum of 3 shots in most of those games, right? So he's brought down his number of shots from, like the McNeese and Purdue games when he's shooting 5 threes a game and he wasn't making anything. So he's taking less shots, but he is making them, right? Much bigger thing. And I think that's a big, thing when you're looking at Jaren is his defense has been so good here recently that he needs to play because the defensive versatility that we have with Jaren has been very, very good. And then him getting the shots is just kind of icing on the cake. And then the last guy that I'm going to talk about, and like I said, I know I'm going to leave plenty of guys off, but it's Grant Nelson. I thought Grant Nelson just played an absolutely phenomenal game. When you look at Grant Nelson, he does better when he's matched up against a traditional 4, traditional 5, a back to the basket guy, because he has that physicality. I thought that the matchup against Asa was a pretty good matchup for him just because Asa being a freshman, Grant being a 5th-year guy, Grant's somebody that has that ability to to use his talent as well as use his physicality that he's used to of playing all that time. And the thing is, Grant scores 16 points, 10 rebounds, has 5 blocks, has a couple of assists, right? It really felt like Grant was kind of everywhere. I thought the help side defense was really good. I thought that overall, just as a team, everybody, played to their potential, or not everybody played to their potential, but everybody played in a way that you thought they would, right? Now, does Alabama still have some things to clean up? Absolutely. Nate talked about the turnovers. You had 20 turnovers that ended up not biting you in this game, but Nate hopes that because you have the 5th-year seniors and you have all the guys that have played a lot of basketball, that they're going to be able to learn from a win the same that you can learn from a loss. So that is something, obviously, that they're going to try to clean up in this off week. Another thing that you also have to look at is, again, Darian Reed and LeBaron Fallon. Both guys coming off of injury. Both guys, were a situation where they did not play particularly good games, but that's okay, right? That they're coming off of injury. You're just trying to get them as many reps as possible. And, Nate talked about they're going to have to try to work with Clark this week to see if they can try to get closer to healthy. And again, not having that midweek game should absolutely help because those guys can be sat out of practices for a little bit and it not be as big of an issue, right? They have time to get ready for that Arkansas game. That's the next game on the schedule. And then the last guy I actually want to talk about, and we've talked about him a lot this season, but in this game, it wasn't really even a scoring situation, but it was just what he did in the minutes he played was Mohamoud Diabate. We talk about Mo a lot as being a glue guy, as being a guy that's able to just do a lot for this basketball team. But no bigger way to explain that than this most recent game, right? This Georgia game, Mo only plays 11 and a half minutes, and he has a little bit of an ankle that kind of flares up or whatever during the game because he was a little hobbled, and Nate, because Alabama was up, Nate, said, hey, he probably would have played more, but we just kind of sat him. And again, when Aiden's playing as well as he is, and you have the depth, you're able to do that. And the thing that you have to say about that is Mohamoud Diabate is a plus 20 in plus minus in his 11 and a half minutes and also gets 20 blue collar points. For reference, Grant Nelson, Nate said, was second in blue collar, and Grant had 19 and a half. Grant played 26 minutes. Mohamoud Diabate played 11 and a half, right? So that's when you look at, on the stat sheet, Grant had a statistically better game, right? He had 10 rebounds. He had 5 blocks. But you understand, how productive Mohamoud Diabate is in the minutes he plays. And it's just something that's, I don't want to say uncoachable, but it's something that's a huge deal for this basketball team because it's something that's inherently, unique to Mohamed Diabate, right? There was an article that was put out earlier this week where Mohamed Diabate is averaging about one blue collar point per minute, and in Herb Jones's SEC Player of the Year season, he only averaged like 0.75, right? So that just tells you a level that Mohamed Diabate is playing at. And in this game, in the minutes that you saw him on the floor, it was huge, right? It felt like he had steals, just diving on the floor for balls, like everything, no matter what, it really felt like Mo was doing what it takes to win. And to a degree, kind of putting his body on the line, which kind of feels like why he may have been hobbled in that the second part of that game, why he didn't play as much. But that is something that is just huge coming down the stretch run. And he's the reason, if you listen to the radio show with Hunter, he's the person that I point to when I look at this team that surprises me the most. Because I just did not expect us to have an offensive option in Mohamed Diabate. When you look at him last season, he could not really finish around the rim. He was a poor free throw shooter, so even if he couldn't finish at the rim, he wasn't making the free throws. He was a pretty good rebounder, but he was just such a liability in some other parts that it really felt like Mo was going to be that 11th or 12th guy on this roster. And in reality, in some cases, Mo's number one off the bench. If Nate needs somebody that can rebound, right? Mo will be the first guy Nate calls for off the bench. And that's just not something I fully expected. We have an off-road package for him from an offensive standpoint. And when you have a guy that has the versatility on defense and in what he does as Mo, and can give you that offensive, option as well. He goes 3 of 4. He has 6 points in this game. Definitely not his best offensive game ever, but, he was definitely completely fine when he was in. Has an offensive rebound, has 6 total rebounds. This is a situation where Mo just requires you to play him, right? For anybody that listens to the Spaces, that's something Joe Corona talks about a lot, that Mo just requires you to play him because he does the things that winning basketball players do, right? And it's no bigger thing, right? Nate's clearly showing, that, hey, you just got to play him. And it's honestly similar in a sense to like LeBaron Philon, right? When we talked about him in the offseason, Nate talked about how they thought about redshirting him, and LeBaron was just playing so well, it's like, nah, you got to play him, right? That's exactly what Mo's doing. When he dominates a practice from an offensive standpoint, Nate and them get some plays together for the off-road package, right? When Mo leads the team in blue-collar points and leads the team in rebounding and such at the level that he does, he requires you to put him on the floor, right? And those things are just, they can be coached, but they're things that inherently are in a player and clearly are in Mohamed Diabate. So that's what I want to talk about for this Georgia game. Like I said, even though he played in limited minutes, but I do think he had an absolutely incredible game. I thought in general, Alabama's defense was very good. Newell does end up making 16 points. He took 15 shots though. So, you'll absolutely give up the 16 points if they got to take 15 shots to get there. Not super efficient basketball, but we knew this was not going to be a very good offensive team, right? So holding them to 69 points seems right on target. I predicted 70. This score was not that dissimilar from what I was expecting. Game worked about how I expected. During the moment, I thought we may have opened it up even a little more. But, overall, I think this game was exactly what Alabama needed to get on track going into the back half of conference play.